So when it came back to the fertility realm, I started discussing these things, and it just seemed like nobody wanted to talk about it unless you were specifically an IVF doctor.
Welcome to the Conception Channel podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Conception Channel podcast brought to you by Ian Still Reproductive Wellness. I am your host, Spence Pentland, and I'm excited to have our special guest on today, Adam Wenger. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah. Today is great. It's Friday, and Friday's always a self-nurturing day. What do Fridays look like for you?
A lot of heavy training, actually, but
yeah.
You're answering a bunch of emails. Yeah, just making sure everyone's getting prepped and ready for the weekend.
Yeah, that's great. Jiu-jitsu. I want to touch on that a little bit later, but today, Adam and I we're going to chat about male factor fertility, and a bit about a company that Adam has. You're from Florida, right? Where exactly in Florida are you, Adam? I forget.
We're located pretty much in the northernest part of Miami Beach.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Element Health, and we'll get into that because we mutual podcast that Adam and I both listened to is where I first learned about you, Adam, and your knowledge was great, and I just loved your demeanor too. It was exactly, someone I wanted to chat with. And when you mentioned that you had fertility journey of your own, we connected after that and chatted, and it's been great to see you kind of through it and where you're at now with how far along in your pregnancy are you with your wife right now?
She's about 4.5 months now. And that's a great way that you put it, for journey. Excellent. I know there's a bunch of other words that creep up in mind when we start talking about fertility, but yeah, journey, it's a perfect word.
Excellent. Well, and I also, you touched on, and we've talked about it since some, but I've seen a lot of men over the years in my practice with absolutely vastly varying degrees of commitment to themselves and their health and the fertility journey along with their significant other, like I said, to varying degrees. And so I really appreciated you and your efforts to dive in really deeply. You're a healthy guy anyway, and obviously your company Element Health is kind of highlights that, but and your jiu-jitsu practice and just who you are. But I wanted to maybe just hand over the mic and a little bit, and you can kind of tell people a bit about your story with your wife, and if you don't mind, I'll just kind of hop in because I know there's going to be a lot of touch points. But for the most part, I thank you so much for wanting to share. I think there's a lot of men out there that it's just, it's just an area of life that is so common these days, that so many couples struggle to conceive and have a child. And men, whatever stereotype you want to put on us, I mean, maybe don't communicate the same way, a lot of women do. And so it's nice that people are willing to share like yourself, because I know as soon as men open up, the floodgates are released, and it's nice because it's a lot to go through as a man as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about how open I am to talking about it, and it made me think about when I started being like such an open book, and it was really at a young age. I just noticed that everything in life, from when I was, let's say, in high school, I would just try to speak as openly as possible about everything. And this was to my parents, this is to anyone, whether it was a professor. And I just found that I found more success in life when I didn't have to hide behind some type of image or try to portray myself in a certain way. And I
Wow.
just wanted to be very straightforward with everything. And this was at a very young age. And I noticed as I did this, things came to me way easier, just being an open book.
Hmm.
So when it came back to the fertility realm, I started discussing these things, and it just seemed like nobody wanted to talk about it unless you were specifically an IVF doctor.
Right, right.
And yeah, there's just a whole sea of things we can get into in terms of infertility. And you let me know how you want to start that up.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, you summarized, like, I don't know who the author might be, Brené Brown or something. I mean, that strength that you had of like that deep authenticity, really,
That's what it is. That's what
really
it is.
early in life. That's an incredible. I don't know if that came through your ancestry or something, but whatever. That's such a gift. Because I think often in life, exactly what holds us back from successes is our dishonesty with ourselves.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here and thinking about it. I mean, I think as a young age, my dad, at a young age, my father always pushed like a rebellious attitude on me, not in a negative way,
Right,
but to always question authority
right.
as much as you could, which is kind of contradictory to what a parent usually tells you to do. And I always found that whether it was like the medical industry or the government, whatever it was, when they were telling me something, I was like, let me question this and let me try to start an open conversation about it.
Right.
And I think it applies more than ever right now.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's incredible. So in the spirit of openness, you and your wife, you started to try to conceive, or to not try to conceive, I think usually is how it begins with most couples. But can you tell us a little bit about kind of how that began? And
Sure. I mean, so it's kind of a funny story. I knew that there would be some issues if I ever wanted to conceive, because when I was in college, uh, I went to a school here in Florida. Uh, the way people the way people look, you could say, is a huge deal because we know we're out in the sun all the time. The fitness industry is so huge down here
right,
that back when I was in college, bodybuilding was a big thing. Like fitness was this huge thing, and there was a lot of competition with that.
right,
Not necessarily bad competition. It could actually be like on stage competition, or
right,
it could just be in college. So steroids and using testosterone, a lot of different types of pretty much the early biohacker days
right,
before we really differentiated what was healthy and what wasn't.
right,
I just wanted to try everything. And
right,
that was actually, I mean, it was a funny story because, the government would tell us drugs are bad or this is bad or this is bad. And I just remember trying cannabis the first time and going, wow, this is not that bad.
right.
What else is not that bad? And that led me to a lot of experimentation. And some of them were great things to experiment with, other things not so much, but they were a profound learning experience.
Of course.
And the steroid thing is an interesting thing because they don't look at it so much as an addictive drug as you
Right,
would think of heroin or cocaine. But on a spiritual level, on a psychological level, they're beyond addictive because you're taking something that makes you look and feel good all the time.
right,
While most drugs are just like a feeling type of thing that people are trying to achieve.
right,
With steroids, whether you're an athlete, a bodybuilder, whatever it is, you're seeing these huge gains and changes in your body that you're like, wow, this is better living through chemistry. This is so fascinating.
right.
And at the time, I really didn't think I ever wanted to have kids.
Of course.
So when I was looking up different compounds that I wanted to take for bodybuilding, I started looking at one of the primary side effects was reduction in sperm count.
Right,
And I just trusted that later on in life, I'll do what I need to do now. And later on in life, if I want to have kids, the technology will be advanced enough that I'll be able to take some kind of magic pill and I'll be able to get pregnant, or I'll be able to get my wife pregnant or my partner or whatever it was. And so I guess you could say that I went into it thinking this might be somewhat of a difficulty. So the first step with that is obviously to try and conceive. And we went through that for about a year. I was sort of hoping that, my sperm count would be high enough, or it just wouldn't be something that I had to be concerned about.
Right.
and we weren't getting pregnant.
Were
So
you,
first,
Adam, were
that's
you still taking the steroids at the time? No.
no. I
Yeah.
had stopped doing traditional steroids as you would see them.
Yeah.
But when you do steroids for a long period of time, you generally have to go on testosterone replacement therapy.
Okay. Yeah. And that
And
brings sperm count can bring sperm count to zero. Well, if it depending on dosage.
exactly. But either way, if you're taking it for substantial amounts of time and you're not taking a lot of the ancillary compounds like HCG, different things which we can get into, your sperm count will go down very low. And suffice to say, when I tested, I was at 0. They were like, we don't see any sperm, like 0, 0, 0.
Right.
So moving forward from there, I said, okay, what do we do now? And I started talking to a bunch of specialists, endocrinologists here in Miami, and it was not as helpful as I thought it would be. They were like, okay, we're just going to stop your testosterone use right now. And if you know anyone that's using testosterone or using any type of compound to, I guess the word is to substitute for natural levels, they're
Right.
going to tell you, okay, maybe I can do this for a week or two, but then I'm going to expect that all my levels are going to go down tremendously. I'm going to experience a lot of depression and all sorts of things. So
Right.
I tried it. I gave it a go for about a month or two, and it was really bad.
Right.
Obviously, it would be way better to not have to use testosterone replacement therapy, although most men these days are using it over the age of 40.
Right.
I wouldn't say most men, but men have lowered testosterone levels, lowered fertility levels due to environmental factors. So the prevalence of using testosterone replacement therapy is way higher than it used to be.
Right.
Now you can go to like any doctor and they can prescribe it to you for the most part. I mean, here in Miami, literally within a 5-minute drive, I know about 5 doctors that prescribe it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how that is up in Canada, but throughout the US, this is a big thing. And now, since the whole COVID thing, there's telemedicine. So you can literally send blood work in, someone can send you testosterone. It's just that easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, when used properly, it's a phenomenal compound. It's just there are certain things, pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
And fertility is not, if you're trying to boost your fertility, testosterone is not the ideal thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously, I knew that me having a very low sperm count was due to that. But at the same time, I've been working with a lot of young men, a lot of couples actually too, and we're talking about fertility rates and how they've decreased substantially. Actually, one of the doctors that I worked with to try to boost my fertility, he was doing a study that he started, I believe it was in the 90s, and it ended around 2010. And they found that the average testosterone level for men, let's say the number was about 650 in the early 1980s, or I'm sorry, 1990s.
Yeah.
And then in 2010, when they retested, the average testosterone level was at 350.
Wow.
So it nearly decreased by 50%. And that also corresponded with reduction in sperm count.
Yeah. Wow. That means that half those men in that cohort were, sub 350. That's, yeah. Okay.
And what's crazy is I have friends testing right now, and they've changed the scale. They're saying 350 is now a quality average. And I have friends that say, no, I don't need to get on test replacement. I'm around 350, 360.
Yeah.
And I said, about 20 years ago, you would be considered low.
Yeah,
and it just blows their mind.
And
these are not people that have used testosterone or any type of steroids.
The same, lab ranges have shifted with sperm analysis. And some of that I think is refinement, and maybe they are right with, but you always got to take lab ranges with a bit of a grain of salt. You got to look at the patient as well. It's like, are they healthy? Step back, and especially with endocrinology, are they healthy? Are they exhibiting the signs of a deficient testosterone? Because if they're not, maybe it's okay for them, but if they are, they could have 500 and be, low for them.
Right. I mean, there's free testosterone, there's so many different levels, and blood work is so tricky because there was actually one time when I was going through the IVF process where the first time I tested after doing my little fertility protocol, I was in normal ranges for a male, like in his late 20s. And they said, wow, you could get you could get your wife pregnant naturally right now.
Yeah.
We retested about 3 weeks later, and it showed extremely low levels. And that was for, sperm count. But in terms of blood work, numbers fluctuate by the day, by the hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can have your test checked in the morning versus the afternoon, and you'll see a huge deviation.
Yeah. That's people don't realize that for the most part. Thank you for highlighting that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And man, there's so many environmental factors now, especially. And I don't know if you ever listened to Joe Rogan. I don't really listen to it all the time, but someone had just sent me the recent podcast. I forget what the doctor's name, but she's the one that did all the studies on phthalates. I believe I'm pronouncing it properly.
Yeah, phthalates, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And the effect on these
softener.
plastics. Yeah, these plastics are all over. People
Yeah.
don't understand water, food supply, and they're already finding a direct link to lower testosterone, lower fertility, even smaller penis, weird changes in sexual maturity.
Yeah.
They're talking about the babies now.
Yeah, kind of the new BPA. Sure. Yeah. There's a researcher in Canada I followed for a long time named Sarah Kimmins from McGill out in Montreal, and she's maybe our Canadian equivalent to whoever was on the show. But yeah, it's serious. I mean, I've to the point where if you're consuming sea salt, there's people that talk about it being impossible to use a sea salt that wouldn't have trace elements of plastics in it now.
I would believe that.
Yeah.
And if you look at our clothes, this is like a huge thing. I'm trying to switch to everything organic cotton, or at the very least cotton, because polyester, nylon, rayon are all forms of plastics.
Yeah.
And down here in the heat, we're running and sweating with these clothes on. I mean, it's a scary thing.
Yeah, it is. So you're alluding to this stuff. So was it a urologist or something that kind of turned you on to that this may help in a sense, or?
That what would help specifically?
Well, just avoiding, educating yourself and becoming aware and mindful of the toxic, soup that we walk through every day.
Oh yeah, so that's something that I always kind of knew about. I've studied natural applied physiology and kinesiology at University of Florida, and I've always been into a natural, organic type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because I'm using these compounds like testosterone and whatnot, but I try to use them in the safest way possible.
Right.
And I try to use more plant-based nutrients or things that are natural versus something that's synthetic. And we can get into that with the CBD as well.
Yeah.
But it was Jake Campbell. So he wrote a book called The Testosterone Optimization Therapy Bible.
Okay.
Yeah, we were connected through Ben Greenfield, and he is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to everything in terms of male hormone optimization, fertility, and all these things. And he actually knew the doctors that I was working with and not having success with.
Right.
And he really kind of reinforced to me that you have to be your own doctor.
Yeah. Advocate. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we can get our own blood work at any time, and we just have to do our own studying. But most people, they'd rather pick up the phone, scroll through social media, or go look at Netflix, anything but actually taking responsibility for something so important like your fertility.
Yeah. Health in general.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. This is what I talk about all day long with our customers and clients. And sometimes I forget that the knowledge is out there, but people don't grasp it. They don't fully have an idea of how important this is.
Yeah.
They say, I try not to eat GMO foods, or I don't eat out all the time. I just order Uber Eats in all the time. And I said, but all your food is hot and coming to you in a plastic container.
Yeah.
You really have to be vigilant about your health these days.
And if it's cooked in oil, I mean, sure, it's bulk, industrially produced canola oil in there. It not some fancy, olive oil from Southern Italy that's organic.
Exactly. God, the level of inflammation people are experiencing these days, it's absurd, and that's what really got me motivated with Element Health. Not trying to plug my product or anything, but
I want to anyway.
It's a part of me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in terms of the whole benefit with CBD and supplementation came a little bit later, but I was always told that there's a huge generation of people that will be experiencing infertility, and more and more and more, because when a mother is subjected to these phthalates, all these different
Right.
forms of plastics, it's affecting the child anywhere from like 20 to 50%. They're going to have a reduction in fertility. So then think about that child when they grow up and they're exposed. I mean, it's a scary thing to think that fertility levels are going down so
Yeah.
quickly. And then when children are born, there are greater prevalences of different diseases, genetic disorders, or even prior to that, we see miscarriages are on the rise as well.
Right. They are, I mean, some of these environmental toxins that, we can go way down a rabbit hole, Adam, but
Yeah.
they're finding, pesticides like the glyphosates and
Oh.
likely some of these plastics and residues that we're going to have in our food, whatever. They, not only can be passed down to offspring through mother and utero, et cetera, but some are actually showing transgenerational activity that can increase as generations move forward. So great grandchildren are having more negative effects of glyphosate, for example, than the offspring of someone who is exposed. So transgenerational, which is crazy. Like the motivation to try and live clean, it should be a no-brainer.
A no-brainer, and it should be like on your mind all the time, not to the point where you're stressing over it and create. Sometimes it happens with me, because I'm searching for a product online and my filter for what I'm allowed to purchase is so high.
Yeah.
My wife thinks I'm absolutely crazy. And then she hears a podcast and she goes, "Yes, you've been telling me this for 10 years. I get it now."
Sounds like we have homologous lives. Yeah, that's great.
Exactly.
But okay. So you start taking some steps toward you maybe move from testosterone into HCG and Clomid or something and started taking some supplements, or what were some of your steps you took next?
Yeah, so let's go into that. I started working with acupuncturists and chiropractor, a lot of natural healing modalities that I was always doing all the time anyways, but this time I told them I'm working on the fertility aspect. And a lot of times they were telling me, in traditional Chinese medicine, kidneys are such a big part of treatment. Don't they say like life stems from your kidneys in Chinese medicine? You can
reproductive essence, sure, it comes from there. Right. Yeah, but that's not always the modern cause. It's a very traditional Chinese viewpoint, but yeah, that does play a role quite often.
Right, right. Mm-hmm. So in terms of more of the Western approach, I said, you know what, I'm not going to get off testosterone right now. I want to see if I can do this because I saw a few studies that showed people utilizing HCG and follicle stimulating hormone, which is FSH, alongside their traditional testosterone supplementation.
Nice.
And that they were finding that their sperm counts were able to increase, not as much as if they had gotten off testosterone,
right?
But it was working. So I basically spoke to some doctors. I told them what I wanted to take. I wasn't completely open that I'm going to stop testosterone.
Right.
I just told them, hey, I'll stop it, but you got to prescribe me this, and this, which they did. I continued the testosterone use and I started integrating HCG and FSH at about a quarter of the recommended dose.
Microdosing. Did you microdose the testosterone too, or did you lower that dosage too, or was it kept consistent?
My testosterone dosing was around 120 milligrams per week.
Okay.
Which I was using divided 7 days a week. So I was getting just more natural spikes in testosterone versus blasting 140 or 120 milligrams into my body in one shot. Right. So I'm getting these huge peaks and valleys. I was trying to avoid that. I wanted to keep my body as close to homeostasis as possible.
Right.
I really believed, like from a spiritual standpoint, that if I stayed centered, really balanced, connected to the earth, connected to my sense of the creator, and feeling like I am a perfect manifestation of, I don't want to use the word God. We all, worship different ways. But whatever created me, you want to call it the universe or God, with Mother Earth, I wanted to be like the perfect manifestation of that and seek balance. Nice. And that's why technically I was on testosterone, because my levels were low. So I wanted to bring it back up to, I guess you could say, an average level.
Right.
So everything I did at that point, I was looking more towards like fertility-based diets,
Yeah.
which you could look at a Mediterranean style diet, but I really just wanted to eliminate processed carbs,
Yeah.
vegetable oils,
Yeah.
especially cooking them at high temperatures. I wanted to
Yeah.
minimize inflammation,
Yeah.
and I wanted to contribute as much to like eating a whole animal. Like I'm a hunter myself,
Yeah.
but I used to not eat heart, liver, kidneys. I started eating a lot of organs.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I would always hear about how like the alpha animal, when they like a pack of wolves, let's say, would take down an animal, the alphas would always eat the organs first. The rest of the pack got to eat the rest of the meat. There's got to
Right.
be something to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I started using the HCG and the FSH. I wouldn't call it microdoses, but they were telling me to take these certain amounts that I would take it and I could feel massive surges of testosterone and estrogen. When you know your body enough, you
Yeah.
can tell when something's off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started noticing like gynecomastia, which is
Okay.
basically like a puffiness behind in the
Interesting.
breast tissue. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it wasn't the gland itself growing, but it was fatty tissue.
Yeah.
I didn't really worry about that so much, but as I kept going, it kept getting bigger and bigger, which was telling me my estrogen was getting way out of whack.
Yeah.
Potentially prolactin. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can contribute to gynecomastia. It's primarily inflammation, is what I believe,
Right.
and genetic causes. But I could just tell something was off. So I reduced it to 50% of the dose that they wanted me to take. I still felt off. I wasn't sleeping well.
Yeah.
And I believe that if you're not sleeping, if you're not feeling good, you're
Yeah.
not going to be fertile.
Yeah.
So I lowered it to a quarter. Basically, then I just started feeling good again. I noticed the testes were getting a little more plump and my sex drive was right where it should be. I just started feeling really good.
Awesome.
At the same time, I'm a big proponent of, they call it plant medicine nowadays,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is really using like psychedelic plants or plants from the Amazon or native plants
Right.
to gain like deeper insight into ourselves and to the big picture.
Yeah.
And I would use them and I would meditate deeply on creating this new life of fertility, creating a baby inside of my wife.
Yeah.
And I mean, the power of belief, and not just believing, but knowing it.
Yeah.
I contribute the fertility I have now to that. I'm mixed with a little bit of Western medicine and also some of the Eastern natural herbs that I was using.
Nice. Nice. That's so good you touch on that, because I mean, yeah, the plant medicine, which is something I'm a proponent of as well. I mean, it really does highlight that mind-body connection and maybe reestablish a disconnection that so many people just naturally fall into these days, because just life is tough and just trying to keep it together, and let alone experimenting with microdosing psilocybin or mushrooms or these things is a lot. And I think that, I mean, that's a great segue into cannabis or CBD, more Element Health, your company. Cannabis is something that in Canada, a few years back became legal recreationally, and the world watched, and as it is in a few states, and they keep adding more recently, we're seeing probably the tax revenue need in the US coming, which is great. But even the cannabis has it has the THC component, the cannabinoid, which has a psychoactive component, and it doesn't sit well with a lot of people. But so what you've done, and there's questions as to what it is doing, on the endocannabinoid system and fertility, et cetera. But what you've done is you're utilizing and have created a company based on the use of full spectrum CBD oil, which is a non-psychoactive component of cannabis.
Correct. And apologies if I'm all over the place here, because
that's great.
My fertility journey. Yeah, good. Yeah, bring it in, because my fertility journey it took like a solid year of different modalities, and I get excited. I get off on a tangent on one, and they're all interrelated. It's not like, you take these pills, you take this drug, done. It's not to say that it's a very complicated process for anyone that's going through this.
Right.
It just means they have to have some focus and serious intention,
Right.
and a bit of willpower. You can't stress yourself out over these things because that's going to have a negative impact on your fertility. But coming back to CBD, it's a very hot topic right now. Luckily, I recognized the benefits a long time ago. And this was something I may have mentioned in another podcast, but it's so important, the sourcing of your CBD.
Right.
Because we were getting a CBD from probably the number one company at the time back in 2016. And it was phenomenal. I was getting better sleep. We were able to relax a little more in stressful times. At this point, I was working in a holistic resort teaching about 8 classes a day
Wow.
of fitness. But I don't mean sitting there. I mean boxing, running, jumping, teaching meditation. I mean, to the point where I was run down with inflammation.
Right.
And I just found that the CBD was incredible. So we were using it for about 4 to 5 months, I'd say. And I started noticing the effects were beginning to dwindle. And I started talking to my parents about it, and they said, yeah, it's not as strong. I figure it's like anything, as you take it more and more, you'll have less pronounced effects.
Right.
And I started researching this, and that should not be the case. So it's funny because at the time I said, you know what? I had already been selling supplements. I was working sort of as a middleman from labs to customers and to different companies, working with the testing protocols and all this. I said, I have huge connections. I have so many customers and clients I'm working with on a daily basis. I need to find a really good version of this. Right. So I thought this company was it. And I reached out to them and I was talking to them about wholesaling it and private labeling and whatnot. And I said, something's different though. I didn't want to tell them right away, like, oh, it's weaker. Right. I just, hey, did you guys change something? And they said, oh yeah, actually we moved our operation to Colorado. Okay. It's just way easier, way less, I wouldn't say regulations, but it's way easier to grow out there. Right. And they were able to get way cheaper help. So they were paying people less and the farms were huge. Okay. So it was mass-produced hemp. Yep. And for your patients that don't know, cannabis, this is all cannabis. I know cannabis might have a strange connotation to it, maybe less nowadays, but think of cannabis as the umbrella. And now there is a variant of cannabis called hemp, and hemp has been used forever. I mean, our forefathers in the United States were growing hemp all the time. It's been used in England, all over the world, because it's such a durable material. It can be clothing. You can use it on the sails of a boat. You can use it for everything, making paper. And the amazing thing is you cut a plant down, it grows right back. It's unlike a tree where you cut a tree down, it's going to take years and years and years. So it's not leading to deforestation. Right. So this form of cannabis, hemp, in the US, you're required to have under 0.3% THC. Right. This is a super small amount because if someone was to go say, hey, let's go get some pot, we want to catch a buzz, they're going to be smoking anywhere from 14 to who knows, upwards of 30% THC. Right. This is 0.3 at the very most. And that's on a dried weight basis. Right. So this is all coming from the hemp plant. Right. Right.
The CBD. Yeah.
CBD, correct. Yeah. Now, CBD is like the catchphrase because CBD is the most prevalent of what's called cannabinoids. Yeah. These compounds like THC, they're in the plant. The two most prevalent are THC, that you'll find more of in traditional pot plants. I hate to say pot, but cannabis plants that grow high THC that are used primarily for smoking.
Marijuana or pot. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And hemp, there's very little THC, but CBD is the primary cannabinoid. Right. Now, a lot of companies, especially here in the West, what they do is they think we need to isolate things. Isolation is getting you the strongest, most pure product. Right. So I like to give the example of someone that, let's say, is looking for a specific vitamin. They can either eat a leafy green vegetable, like let's say spinach, or they can take a specific vitamin. Right. And it just so happens that when you eat it in its whole food form, you get way more health benefits overall because there's enzymes in the plant, there's fatty acids, there's so many things that contribute to this vitamin actually being absorbed properly into your body.
And utilized. Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it's the same thing with hemp and what they call CBD.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies, they get this stuff called pure CBD, which is CBD isolate.
Right.
It's generally flavorless. So when you see people saying, hey, I have water with CBD in it, or I have cooking oil with CBD, I mean, they're making everything with CBD.
Yeah.
They're using this
Gummy bear
cheaper form. Yeah, everyone. And
Yeah.
it's this cheaper form of CBD.
Yeah.
So what we use is what's called full spectrum, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's basically taking all the cannabinoids out of the plant. We keep a little bit of the chlorophyll, but we remove a lot of the stuff that's just totally unnecessary and
Right.
adds to like too much of like a thick paste, but we
Right.
keep all the necessary things,
Right.
which are like the essential fatty acids, the terpenes, which are the flavors of the plant, bioflavonoids, and all the cannabinoids.
Right.
And when you ingest a full spectrum CBD product, you get what's called the entourage effect.
Right.
And the entourage effect just means that there's synergy between all these different cannabinoids.
Yeah.
So even that tiny dose of THC, it might be 0.1, 0.2. It combines with the CBD, with
Right.
CBN, CBG. There's so many cannabinoids to give you a more pronounced health benefit. And that I thought, you know what, this is what I need to focus on. And I need to find an ideal source. So I guess the journey went on. And thankfully, my family had some connections in different parts of the US with some farmers who were beginning to grow. They're beginning to grow hemp themselves,
Nice.
but they had connections with people that had been growing hemp for 6, 7, and 8 generations.
Nice.
So I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is something
where
to
you
look
want to
into.
get your product. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it took a little while, but we got a hold of some of these farmers. And
Yeah.
I said, look, like, I want you to try your products. I gave them a specific strain of hemp that I found to be like the most remarkable in terms of the subjective effects.
Right.
And they were growing that. And eventually when we tried it, I was like, whoa, this is like something totally different. This is not like what I've been getting from all these companies online.
Yeah.
I mean, the effects were pronounced. I mean, some people, you take it and within 30 minutes, you're like, I feel this.
Yeah.
And it's not a high.
No.
It's this calming, focused effect that if you take it before bed, you sleep better.
Yeah.
If you take it during the day, you have more energy because the stress has been minimized.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, we're really onto something. So it took another year or two where we really like perfected the growing techniques, the extraction techniques. And that was pretty much it.
It's incredible. I mean, it's you wouldn't be it's just it's a lot closer to how nature intended, which is something I love. And yeah, you get these CBD extracts now in the gummy bears, the drinks, whatever, they're flavorless. And, that should basically, I guess, tell you something about the product that you're actually getting. And depending just on CBD, not all these other plethora of compounds that come with a full spectrum extract, like you've got. All you have to do is taste the CBD from that you produce, a full spectrum, and right away it feels like it tastes like you consumed the plant. It's very powerful. Admittedly, it's I try and keep it in my mouth under my tongue for a bit, and it's very powerful. But it's and not only that, I mean, CBD is expensive. Even this extract, this pure CBD extract, they're expensive, and they're not giving the benefit that I agree with you that can come from something like your extract. And you take a few drops of one and typical, and a few drops of yours, they're unbelievably different. I mean, it's just in quantity. But for the podcast today, I did a little stack just to be nice and in the moment with you, a full mill of your full spectrum, and that it puts you at what, sits in a lot of bottles that you'd buy in a typical cannabis dispensary in Canada, of CBD. And it feels nice. And I kind of combine it, sometimes stack it with some magnesium and some Chinese herbs. And, the day is good. I'm into going for a walk and connecting with myself. And like you said, that spiritual, that spiritual piece that was important for your intention and your fertility, it almost might be interpreted by some as feeling a little bit high per se, but it's really just, it's my belief that, most people are not used to being relaxed and really clear. So when all your senses are kind of more acute and in tune, and it can be quite a shift for people. So your product is very, very different. So can you tell us kind of a little bit about how it, you created this and how it played into, helping you with your fertility?
Sure.
Yeah.
So another part of it was, I noticed, and you were talking about the expense of CBD. Most of these companies, they're so disingenuous, and it drives me crazy. And we went back to, like, at the beginning of the podcast, talking about being your most authentic self.
Right.
And you were telling me, like, oh, let's get together on a podcast. I got so excited just because I can, like, share this story with people. Hopefully they can understand that fertility issues are very common nowadays. And there's, like, so many ways to deal with it aside from just going strictly to a doctor.
Right.
But circling back, these companies were so disingenuous. We did third-party testing on a range of products on the biggest companies, at least in the US, and I believe in the world, that are shipping all over the place.
Yeah, like Aurora, all these big, I know.
Oh yeah, Aurora we didn't test, but there's some really big ones. And they say the bottle has 1,000 milligrams in it. We tested it at 2 different labs. One time tested at 600 milligrams. Another one was 750 milligrams.
Wow.
Not only that, they're charging 2 or 3 times the price of what we're charging.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, they're producing this at like pennies on the dollar, and they're just ripping people off. And it kills me, because then their marketing is, it's all different. Some market it as like a pot hippie type product. Other ones marketed as like health boosting. But I just felt like they were all being so disingenuous. So some of our products, we have it ranging from $35 all the way up to like $700, $800 on bulk packages. But you're always getting your money's worth. And this is stuff that I take, my family takes. And I don't know, it made so much sense to me that we were able to bring healing to so many people all over the world. I get these emails every day. I wake up to them like, oh my God, I wish I had gotten this from you 3 years ago. Or my dog can get off the couch. This was like, I have a bunch of dogs.
Yeah.
So
you've got a pet line. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. And when they're telling me that they almost had to put their dog to sleep because it wouldn't get off the couch, wouldn't eat. Then it's taking our CBD, and it's like a puppy jumping up and down off the couch.
Great.
So I had to start like looking into these things. I'm like, what is causing it? And I know I'm not just giving someone a drug that's stimulating some kind of neurotransmitter right away and making them hyper in the short term. Or it's not like stimulating a GABA receptor or like taking a Xanax and knocking them out. Because CBD works, there's this thing called the endocannabinoid system, which you had discussed, and it's basically like this huge regulatory body of the central nervous system. I call it's the interface between the human being and nature, because nature, real nature, let's say we were out in the country somewhere, the food you're eating, the water you're drinking, everything is, like you said, as nature intended. This is how I like to I use the exact phrase. But most of us are living in a city. So the environment now is plagued with heavy pollutants, and not just on a physical level. We also hit with EMF from Wi-Fi. There's so many different things. There's just stress in the air. If anyone turns on social media, especially since COVID, since the election stuff, I mean, it's nonstop.
It's nuts.
For you to not be stressed out, you almost have to not go on the computer.
Yeah.
So the ECS, I consider it this interface. It's a way that we can sort of like interchange with the environment in a more healthy way. So instead of the environment bombarding us with things, it allows us to kind of be ourselves and have like a protective, strong shield, like an aura about ourselves that allows us to take the good and sort of filter out the bad. And how does it work? It works, I mean, cannabis itself, like let's say you're talking THC or high doses of another cannabinoid, they directly stimulate the endocannabinoid system.
Right.
But the thing is, a full spectrum product like mine that has a high amount of CBD and just the right amount of other cannabinoids, it's allowing your body to work more efficiently. So we just call it optimizing your own endocannabinoid system.
Right. Okay. Okay. This is important. Yeah.
Yeah, this is super important because what happens is there's an endocannabinoid. So when you're taking a cannabinoid from outside, like from a plant, it's called an exogenous cannabinoid. That just means from outside
Like
the body.
pot. That's it.
Exactly, exogenous. But we have a lot of these compounds in our body already, and they're called endogenous, inside the body, cannabinoids.
Right.
So our CBD product works with the endocannabinoid system to allow your body to use your own endocannabinoids more efficiently.
Right.
Probably the most prevalent one, the one that everyone knows about, I wouldn't say everyone, but the one that the most studies are done, is called anandamide.
Okay.
And oh man, responsible for so many things. But CBD in itself inhibits the enzyme that breaks down anandamide. So basically, our body's allowed to create more anandamide, and it stays at these receptor sites for longer periods of time. So with reference to fertility, I mean, the CBD that I take, the one that I sell, I really think that it's optimizing our hormone balance. It's reducing the inflammation that we're experiencing from the environment, from the stress or our interpret of environmental stressors. But anandamide, I mean, they found that in women, it can enhance sexual arousal. They found that in the proper doses, it can actually increase fertility because there are receptor sites on the actual on the ovaries themselves.
Yeah, there's receptor sites for endocannabinoids or cannabinoids on sperm everywhere, right?
Everywhere, exactly. I mean, you would probably know a little bit more about that. But the effects of these full spectrum products, I mean, from pain relief, anti-inflammation, antioxidant, it reduces anxiety. It really helps with sleep regulation. I've noticed that. Decreases blood pressure, and all things you just find that can get out of whack with excess inflammation and excess stress levels.
And those are all the same things, Adam, that will, if in check, improve overall health and fertility. I've seen it for years. So
it's funny when you see the people that are like the least healthy, they experience these symptoms. They just feel like in pain all the time. Their joints ache. They have anxiety. I mean, I know this because I work with so many of these people, and anxiety and stress is probably like the number one, I would say, complaint people have that also seem to have fertility-based issues.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, fertility is an expression of whole health. That's, something I have reiterated to it. There are exceptions to that. It's not a rule, but for the most part, if someone is wanting to, improve their fertility, their sperm count, their egg quality, I mean, looking at all these things, sleep, inflammation, digestive support, all these things matter. And if, like you said, a full spectrum CBD, I thank you for highlighting the differences, because it just makes sense always when we're using something that's a step closer to its natural form, that it's going to have checks and balances in place and not be throwing something else out of balance while it's trying to create a market effect in another system or something. So it's really this full spectrum that you used to that it played a role in enhancing your fertility, outcome.
I believe so. I
Yeah.
really do. I think it was creating like a sense of balance and really getting in touch with my spiritual side and
Yeah.
also using just a little bit of traditional Western medicine, but not overdoing it. Like you just said, it's so easy to take. I mean, they were just giving me drugs, giving me
Yeah.
the weirdest drugs, and I would like try it for a week and I could just intuitively sense it was not good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you see your body reacting horribly, like not sleeping well or developing like gynecomastia,
Yeah.
which I've noticed in a lot of men. Actually, like I ended up getting a minor surgery to get it removed because it had developed
Okay.
like a
Yeah.
hard tissue, like the glandular tissue got hard. But to me, I wanted to make sure I took all the right products, even if it was in low doses. And I see so many men that have it. And my wife said, I had no idea this was a thing. I
Right.
thought like some men were a little bit fatter. So
Right.
like they would kind of have like breast tissue, like you could see through their shirts, but it's not because there's plenty of overweight people that don't have like breast tissue, men I'm referring to, where it's poking out a little bit. And that's usually a sign that very high levels of inflammation or estrogen.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, oh, the endocrine disruptors, we got get back to that, but that
Oh,
is just
yeah.
such a big piece. So I I really appreciate, your um the due diligence you've done with this company, because like anything, just like alcohol, I mean, these products don't have, that we see with CBD or whatever, they don't have labels on them.
Oh,
They're
my
maybe
gosh.
not standardized properly because no one's really regulating it. Just like wine, I mean, batches can differ from, alcohol content from one batch to another, and no one's really checking on that unless it's an organic biodynamic um, product. There's, and there's additives that can be utilized that I don't know why they don't have to be declared, but whenever anything gets into the realm of big business like cannabis has, for sure in Canada and the United States for sure,
Mhm.
it's important that people like you and what you're doing and this kind of knowledge gets out, because inevitably people adopt and want to try, and they hear about CBD and these things, and they're like, oh, okay, well, I wonder if that could help me with a plethora of things, including maybe fertility, because my God, the stress, the sleep, as a male, dealing with that it's huge. So if, there's things like that that can help, and you're not, you're educated, and it's like, well, I should be taking this good quality. I'm all about that versus, it's like food. You can eat spinach that was grown, you know, one way in nutrient deficient soils, et cetera, or you can, get some from a biodynamic farm and, be Popeye essentially,
Yeah.
and it does matter, so this Element Health, I mean, I'll put that in, the show notes, a link to your site, because I think it's important. And I love that you touched on dogs, because that's, the furry family members are important as well. But I love it. But I'd like to, before we wrap up here, I want to let you go pretty soon, because we could chat forever, obviously, but I
Yeah.
would love to leave people with kind of a bit of ultimately you guys, went through IVF, right? And got pregnant, and you're halfway through now, which congratulations.
Thank you.
It's so awesome. And I hear it in your voice. I feel fortunate to have, kind of got to know you a little bit through this time. But what was the stack? So if you can kind of almost just list it off, there's a little bit of testosterone, but that's kind of from the past, but, on the HCG and Clomid, or the FSH. But what, the CBD was there, and was there anything else that you think was kind of pivotal besides, the spiritual component and things, but maybe more in the supplement realm?
Sure. Let me let me circle back really quick, because you mentioned something about due diligence. That is the most important thing, in my in my opinion as well, because let's say, for example, there's this, there was a study that had come out, I'm trying to find it, where they had said that CBD can cause elevated liver enzymes or possibly like liver disease. And it was at this time where like CBD was just becoming very popular. And I said, I just know this is not the case. So I just started looking into it a bit. And what happened was, of course, it was a scientific study, some research study where they used absurdly high doses of CBD isolate. So first of all, they weren't using, isolate. They weren't using full spectrum. They were using, and it was on rats. And it would be the equivalent of taking 7 of my largest bottles of CBD all at once every day for several weeks. Just so you know, one of these bottles would last you 2 or 3 months, depending on how much you're taking. So they were giving rats the equivalent dose of 6 of these every day for weeks, not even full spectrum. They were giving them CBD isolate. So I looked into the CBD isolate they were giving. It was probably grown genetically modified with genetically modified plants, first of all. So extremely high doses, genetically modified plants, and they used an extremely liver toxic hexane solvent to
extract it. Okay.
Yeah, to extract it. And there was leftover, there was residual solvent. Yeah. So you had 3 huge things that it just would make no sense at all. It would be like saying, alcohol is really bad for you. We tested it because we drank 3 liters of alcohol we made in our basement. Right. And the guy got pretty sick. Yeah. I'm like, luckily it was debunked pretty soon after. Yeah, but good. That just shows you like every compound you take, once you decide to take it, research and make sure you're getting it from the best brand. And so circling back now, what was that?
And that goes, that due diligence should go into, the acupuncturist you're choosing, the Chinese herbs you're taking, the supplements that you're ordering from Amazon, they, or even the psilocybin, whatever you're microdosing. Your due diligence is, unbelievably important. That's that self-advocacy that physician, reiterated so strongly that is a must today.
Yeah, I would love to dive into the microdosing too, but I'm sure we can do that next time.
Let's do that. That's a separate thing. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So in terms of what I took, I actually have a list up. I was taking HCG.
Yeah.
I started at 250 IUs every other day. This is when I got to the dosing that I was happy with, that I found didn't have any of the side effects, all the side effects I wanted to avoid. Yeah. I started at 250 IUs every other day.
Yeah.
I started seeing drastic improvements in my sperm count. So I started bumping it up as high as 500 IUs every other day.
Okay.
That was at the peak.
Yeah.
That's still pretty low. They usually tell you to take 2,000 IUs every other day.
Okay.
So I was taking under a quarter, or about a quarter at the most. Follicle stimulating hormone is very, very expensive if you can get it. HMG, that is sort of the substitute, and it has 2 compounds in it, LH, luteinizing hormone, and follicle stimulating hormone. You can use either one interchangeably, I believe, and I use 75 IUs a day of that. That was closer to the recommended dose. Now, in terms of, because you take those, you can get certain spikes in testosterone and estrogen. And that's a good thing. Estrogen, when your test goes up, your estrogen should go up as well. Most people, like if you go to a testosterone doctor or a hormone replacement doctor, they give you testosterone and they give you estrogen blockers called aromatase inhibitors. Right. They say, oh, estrogen's going up, we need to block it. I don't know why they don't realize estrogen is a good hormone when it's not out of balance.
Proper ratio.
Cardioprotective, neuroprotective. There's so many benefits to this, but it can convert to, let's just say, types of estrogen you don't want circulating in your body. Yeah. So I used DIM, DIM, from a brand called Designs for Health.
Yeah.
And a product called Indole 3-carbinol, which is found in broccoli.
Yeah.
But the best one is actually only available in Canada, which is pretty funny. I actually special order once in a while from Canada. I will give you the exact brand name so you can probably
Yeah. Well,
put it in the show
we
notes.
at my clinic, we compound
Oh, even better.
is something called Balance that has the indole 3 carbinol. It has calcium D-glucarate. It has DIM, broccoli seed extract. It's really for those times in men or women, that there is an estrogen dominance of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually used it as well during IVF for my wife.
Yeah.
Oh man, I could talk to you all about the IVF process. That's pretty exciting. But I think I'm gonna have to get it from you from now on, the DIM and indole 3 carbinol, if you're getting
Yeah.
it compounded yourself.
Yeah. It's
Okay,
great.
circling back, CoQ10 with
Yeah.
a PQQ that
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to pronounce it.
Yeah. No, that's
Pyrroloquilon, yeah, but something about sperm health. It can
yeah.
improve,
Motility in
egg
particular.
quality.
Yeah.
Exactly. Most people don't understand the difference between sperm count and motility.
Yeah.
You can have a bunch of swimmers, but they need to be able to swim.
Forward fast. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, it's also a great antioxidant.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
found that all
Mitochondrial
the
support. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
perfect. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else was there? There's a product called Fertile Aid.
Right.
That's you can get that on Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Again, we produce something of our own because
oh,
I love
exactly.
staying on the research for these supplements, so I compound that as well. It's called Abundance. It's carnitine and zinc and N-acetylcysteine and a little
Exactly.
splash of a couple of other things that are really vital, and just wherever there's evidence, we try and stick to evidence base as far as the supplements are concerned, because it's there.
Do you sell that to like on your site, or do you do it primarily for your patients?
Yeah, both. I mean, it's a professional compounding, so we just basically have to have a quick little, email consult if someone that isn't a patient wants to buy it. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One that you'll be familiar with, Romania number 6.
Yeah, sure. That's great.
Yeah,
We've got it
a
in a
lot of
sleep formula too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
really using it for sleep.
Yeah, I mean, Shengdi Huang, the Chinese, name for it. Yeah, it's quite deeply nourishing in that it gets into that kidney that you were speaking to at the beginning, but it's also really nice. I like herbals for sleep because, you can use a lot of nutraceuticals and extracts and vitamins and things that are known maybe to help with sleep. But again, you use plants or not plant medicine. I don't want to mix those up, but herbals, they just seem to be more like a smart key that kind of figures out what you need versus, you can kind of throw yourself off a little bit. You take too much GABA or, certain things that play with neurotransmitters and don't have the checks and balances of like your full spectrum CBD.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out your site now. It'd be a lot easier to just get it directly from you and knowing the source versus ordering on Amazon.
Yeah.
But the last thing I actually put on my list was microdosing. Now, like I won't get into the details of microdosing, although ayahuasca, which the primary ingredients are like the capi vine that they grow in the Amazon. They grow it in many different places. Banisteriopsis capi.
Yeah.
They usually mix it with DMT. Now, I would use my own little versions of it. Sometimes I would use the vine by itself in a microdose. And they actually did studies on this, how they found that chronic exposure to rats, like in ayahuasca, in a certain dosage actually increased sperm count and testosterone. It wasn't the same in low doses or high doses. It was like the perfect medium dose. So I just found that really interesting. And I found that these compounds, like we talked about, generational kind of like damage, you can say, that can occur, whether it's certain things you're putting in your body, how it affects the offspring. But I didn't take into account, or I started to, genetic trauma that can be passed down. I mean, our ancestors we think we have it hard now, but we don't realize what our ancestors really, really went through in times of like serious war. Or just trying to stay alive. And I thought, man, there's got to be something to this. So I like to use those plants to kind of look inside myself and see if there was any like generational wounds or something from my childhood or anything that could have been there that could be blocking my body from creating like the perfect fertile environment for healthy sperm production. That's for
I mean,
another podcast
that
altogether.
is, and let's set that up because there's so much there, and I love that. But I mean, I just want to reiterate that also, you know, and I think Tim Ferriss and some of these MAPS advocates and stuff that I bow down to with this kind of information, but transgenerational healing. We were talking about transgenerational damage, but transgenerational healing, you know, if we can utilize some of these substances to maybe soothe and rid ourselves of trauma that may have been passed down, then we are in essence giving our children and our offspring and future generations one of the greatest gifts, you know, that's possible.
Imagine that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, more so than providing good food or a great school.
Yeah.
What are we doing to them on like a psychic and spiritual level?
Yeah.
And I try to do that. I try to continue doing this. I see my wife with her belly, her little bump starting to grow, and I talk to him or I use certain plans to try to really connect with his soul and let him know like what he's going to be growing up into and the life that he could have of infinite possibilities. I mean, they're endless.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that's because he's got a dad that did the due diligence and was committed, and you know, that's our generation. And I love that. And I love hearing that because I am so all about wishing I had the power of Dickens, being the Dickens power, I'd call it, maybe, of being able to bring, you know, men into, or be the ghost of fatherhood future, because I just don't think, you know, a lot of men connect to it for one reason or another. And it's there's nothing more important to heal our, you know, our earth and our, you know, than to, you know, take care of our families and communities like you're talking about. So let's schedule that, because I think a lot of people, this microdosing thing is just, a lot of people are hearing whispers in the psychedelic medicine community and research, and it's starting to blossom in Canada here as well. And I would love to get your takes on stuff, because it can be utilized. It shouldn't be something people are afraid of. And I think that's where it's at right now, because of the psychoactive component. But I'm going to wrap it up here for us.
For sure.
And just thank you so much for sharing your journey and just kind of hopefully inspiring, you know, men to dig, you know, this guy from Florida who's a jiu-jitsu, you know, expert and health advocate and expert in creating this like really grassroots, amazing, you know, CBD company, and just taking everything to the next level. Could be anybody. So, I mean, you're inspirational, and I'm just so happy that all your due diligence ended in, you know, successful pregnancy, and you know, whoever's coming out and choosing you and your wife to be their mom and dad is lucky.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. That's great.
It's an
So
honor.
I will ditto. I will be in touch, and we'll talk more about microdosing, because it's big and an interesting topic as well. And again, you've been successful in your fertility from zero to baby. So I think it's almost anything you've got to say is worth listening to from the male population out there that we touch.
Thank you. And if anyone has questions, you know, about the CBD, they can email me, info@elementhealthsupply.com. I'm sure you can put it up there. I'm answering emails all day.
Yeah, he is good at it. FYI. Yeah, he's quick. But elementhealthsupply.com, and I will definitely attach that to the show notes and stuff, so people have access. But hugs to you and your wife. It's been so nice connecting, and I will be in touch very soon. I've got to run out to a sauna here. I've got my stack, and I got to get to a sauna because after my workout, I know you're probably in recovery too from your training. So
always.
So let's go wind down our Fridays. And it was definitely a pleasure, Adam.
Have a beautiful weekend.
Yeah, you too, man.
We'll talk soon, buddy.
Okay.